All right, boom. Back with another episode, 15. No better way to bring back the podcast with some post-fight analysis. We've been starved of some fights. What's happening, Don?
Yeah, not much, Jazz. Good to watch some fights. Awkward, strange,
Yes.
empty arenas, commentators at different tables, and sometimes the fighters Greg Hardy was thanking the commentary team after his fight for giving some tips because he could hear them. So really, really strange, but crazy fights, epic fights, much needed sports.
Definitely. Yeah, I thought the no crowds was super strange, being able to hear the cornermen, the commentators. Even at one time, I think Joe Rogan or Cormier said, we're speaking pretty loud and everyone can hear us.
Yeah.
So yeah, we said we are going to chat about the top three fights on UFC 249. I mean, we got to start with Gaethje Ferguson. I mean, everyone was, Tony was the betting favorite. Obviously on paper, I think everyone had it. I think we discussed a little bit how, we obviously didn't doubt Gaethje's power. And in the end, that seems to have been Tony's downfall.
Jazz, I'm just telling you, man, for the record, I've got it in writing. A friend of mine, shout out Initial Rob, messaged me yesterday before the fights. And he said, who you got? And I said, look, I'm not a superstitious person, but I've got Gaethje because of the Khabib Tony curse.
Right.
And so when push came to shove, I was like, Gaethje winning puts a nail in the Tony Khabib fight, and that's what's going to happen. And you got to feel bad for Tony. You know, he came so far, he worked so hard, he won so many fights. He's not going to get that shot in all likelihood, unless he wins a few more and Khabib stays on top too. But for the world, Gaethje winning might be good because maybe the universe will let up on some of the other extreme measures it was taking to keep Tony and Khabib from happening. But in all seriousness, epic fight, crazy fight. Gaethje's gotten so good. We were saying before, that he's refining himself. He's picking his moments a bit more. And he looked really very, very good.
Yeah, he really did. I mean, and one thing that stood out to me is how patient he was. We've seen in the past him getting quite sucked into these brawls, and I think that was what really kept him in this fight. I feel he was just kind of stalking Tony, picking his shots, and when Tony came in, he would really go for some hard shots. His leg kicks were phenomenal.
Yeah.
What I heard Chael speaking earlier, and he was saying that a lot of people have said that they feel like Gaethje is a tougher matchup for Khabib than Tony was. And someone who said that too, that Chael said, was Dustin Poirier, who's fought both of them. He's been saying that he feels that Justin is kind of the matchup to make even over Tony from a skills perspective. So that's interesting. You also got to feel a little bit bad. Yeah, go ahead.
I was saying to my brother as well, we were talking about the fights and what to look for. And I was saying, Gaethje is by all accounts a wrestler, but if you've only been watching him in the UFC, like I have, never seen him wrestle. But apparently he can. So he may well be a tougher challenge for Khabib. And I mean, as you said, the patience was incredible, rocking Tony and then being willing to take a breath and not rush when Tony just hardly ever gets that or gets rocked in that way.
Right.
It was really impressive. And Gaethje said in the post-fight press conference that he didn't take one elbow. And to be in there for almost 5 rounds with Tony Ferguson and not get an elbow, it's really, really impressive. And I think that, as disappointing as not seeing Tony versus Khabib will be, mixed martial arts is like the Highlander. If when X beats Y, X takes Y's sort of power and mojo with him, and this has just elevated Justin Gaethje massively. So I'm looking forward to that fight.
Me too. I mean, also, we don't know when it's going to happen and how it's going to be possible, assuming with Fight Island, Dana says they can put on international fights. But one name that has been thrown into the mix is Conor. One of the media said, obviously, if you get offered a Conor fight before Khabib, it's a big money fight. So it'd be interesting. It's hard to say no to that type of fight.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
obviously we all want to see Khabib and Gaethje though.
Yeah.
And yeah, Don, and then obviously a fight that will take very quick to analyze is the heavyweight fight with Rozennik and Ngannou. I mean, I don't know what the time was on that actually. Did you
20
see?
seconds.
20 seconds.
Yeah. Crazy. I mean, we said as well when we discussed this one.
You said it.
Said rock'em sock'em robots, man. And
yeah,
that's really what it was.
Well, your prediction was whoever lands first. Yeah.
Yeah. Whoever lands first. And Ngannou landed first.
Yes.
He
Exactly.
swung and missed about 5 times, but he was like, if I keep swinging, something's landing, you know?
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I worry about with Ngannou is not necessarily at a higher level because Rozenstruik is an unbelievable striker, but more, you know, I noticed that when he fought Alistair Overeem and a little bit with Stipe too with Ngannou is that his like striking is very wild because he's trying to like throw so hard. I saw one time, I think it was an Alistair fight, he threw such a hard right hook that it almost spun him around 360. So, you know, I'm thinking if he doesn't actually land that shot early on like he did on Rozenstruik, you know, wild striking like that leaves, you know, big gaps for guys like who, you know, can take advantage of that, like Stipe and Cormier, who could take a guy like that down. So, I mean, obviously super impressive performance, but I'm not sure that's a tactic and strategy you should take into all your fights.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that's exactly what happened when you ran into Stipe, you know. Stipe's got the skill to make him miss. But when you think about the fact that Stipe did it, I think over 5 rounds, it's hell of an impressive to avoid any of those shots for that long. Yeah, I mean, we might be looking at the most powerful puncher in the history of combat sports. Because you got to think Tyson's up there, Deontay Wilder might be up there or is up there. But is there anyone with the one-shot power of Francis Ngannou in the history of heavyweight combat sports? I don't know. He might be the hardest puncher that's ever been recorded.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, one would think what's next for him. I know that DC's campaigning really hard to get that trilogy with Stipe, and it seems like Dana is always happy to accommodate DC's requests. So if that fight doesn't happen, you'd think that maybe a rematch with Stipe and Ngannou would make sense.
Yeah, he's in a tough position now. He might have to just hang tight or decide to take the Tony risk and fight someone else because DC wants that fight. He wants it to be his retirement fight, the title fight with Stipe. And Stipe tweeted recently and said, you know, I'm not looking to fight now. There's other stuff going on in the world. But Stipe did say in his tweets, the DC fight's going to happen. He wants it. So I think Ngannou might have to just bide his time because he deserves a title shot again, really.
Yeah. And with a fight that quick, I mean, how much patience does he have to get back in there? Basically 20 seconds untouched and break a sweat. I mean, he could go later on.
Crazy.
So yeah, that'll be interesting to see it unfold. And then we had the Dominic Cruz and Henry Cejudo fight, which I thought, you know, Henry came out looking very good. He was landing some seriously hard leg kicks. I mean, you saw in some of the replays how he was just twisting and throwing everything he had into those kicks. But I haven't watched the fight again. But to me, in the moment when I was watching it there and then, I thought immediately like early stoppage.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I thought it was an early stoppage. I haven't watched it again, but in the replays just of the knockout or the TKO, it was an early stoppage. Cruz, like, it's one thing to be like, my mind is all here. That's one argument. But to be, my mind is all here and I was busy getting up when you made the call to stop the fight, that's crazy. I mean, you can see Cruz is almost on his feet. He's pulling himself up against the cage. And really, you know, it's just such a shame. And I feel like it's a shame for Henry Cejudo too, because Henry Cejudo is, you know, he'll take it. He'll take the purse and the win and the team. But Henry Cejudo has been on this incredible run. Two-weight world champion, beaten a bunch of the best guys ever, got this Olympic gold medal, and he wants to say, look, I'm one of the greatest ever. But this win and the TJ win were both arguably early stoppages. This one definitely.
I said that exact same thing earlier today.
Yeah. So it's taken away from Henry Cejudo.
Even the fight with Mighty Mouse was touch and go.
So, I mean, by no fault of his own, he fought a great fight against Mighty Mouse, close fight, fair decision, close decision. He fought amazingly against Cruz and against Dillashaw, but these refs are robbing him of the esteem of being like, I put those guys out without any doubt,
Yeah, but in his mind, it's going to be like that, though.
Yeah. Now he's called it quits, he says. And do you think of him as a Demetrius Johnson level fighter or a GSP level fighter? I don't know.
You see, I agree with you. And the thing that you touched on that really stood out to me was, I don't know how many fights he had since Demetrius, but since Demetrius, I mean, the Marlon Moraes one was convincing. But then the one with TJ and Dominic and Mighty Mouse were all just like, as you say, they kind of could have gone either way. So it almost, he's had a bit of good MMA luck coming his way,
But I mean, you can't blame him for putting TJ on the floor and putting Cruz on the floor. But you can blame the refs for not giving them a fair chance, especially on this.
Yeah. I mean, I was super frustrated when that fight ended because, I mean, firstly, it's a fight. I mean, you got to take you can't get off the canvas and using the fence without getting hit. I mean, you're just going to have to take shots in order to get up.
Yes.
And that's what he was doing. And I don't know, these days, if they're trying to censor the sport in a sense and make it not look too violent. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's a fight. And I was really frustrated with that stoppage. I thought Cruz got robbed, and again, Cejudo kind of wins a fight that wasn't very convincing to me.
Yeah, and I mean, a guy like Cruz working through so many injuries, 4 years of determination to come back, and look, Cejudo was winning the fight. Cejudo put him down, but Cruz looked fine. He looked pretty good for someone who's been off for 4 years, and he was getting up, But Henry Cejudo is really impressive. You got to say, I mean, he's a wrestler. He's knocked people out with sort of karate style striking. He came out with killer Muay Thai leg kicks today. He adapts to the fighter in front of him. He learns incredibly quickly. He's got BMT, as they say in rugby and more in team sports. The big occasion, he steps up.
Yeah,
I'd like to see him not retire. I mean, he's very, very, very good.
I thought he wanted the older fight, so I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, he's saying he wants to do other things, wants to start a family, but he's also saying Dana knows the number, to end his retirement.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was kind of bittersweet for me, but it is what it is. Hopefully we can see Cruz back in the octagon again soon and see what he can do with it. So yeah, that was awesome to have fights, Don. And I think it's now on Wednesday, the 13th this week. There's a fight card again back in Jacksonville, Florida. I think all of the upcoming fights are going to be there until Fight Island's ready. And that's headed by Anthony Smith and Glover Teixeira. And then the co-main on that is Ben Rothwell versus Oven St. Preux, OSP. I used to love, well, not that I used to, but I really felt back in the day when OSP challenged John Jones that he was like a true threat in that weight division, but he just hasn't seemed to live up to that calling, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a good fighter. And I mean, he's got that uncanny knack for hitting the Von Flue choke, which is such a bizarre thing because, as you know, to get a Von Flue choke, you kind of generally have to rely on your opponent making the mistake of holding on to a sort of guillotine type headlock on the wrong side. But Oven St. Preux seems to be able to lock it in before people even have time to realize they're making the mistake.
Yeah, he's
got
just
like
so
4
powerful.
times now. Yeah, it's excited. Fights, excited to have fights again. I mean, it's nothing like the quality of this card that's just been, but interesting fights.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah.
All right, Don. And then just before we wrap up, we're excited to be having another guest on the podcast on Wednesday. And if you could maybe just give our listeners a little bit of background on who we're having on.
Yeah, for sure. Wednesday, we are having a martial arts author, martial arts writer, and his name's Matthew Polly, probably one of the leading writers of martial arts books and combat sports books in the world. He's written 3 well-known books. His first one was about going and spending 2 years at the Shaolin Kung Fu Temple. His second one was about throwing himself into the world of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts, which ended up with himself having an MMA contest. And his most recent one is a comprehensive autobiography on Bruce Lee called Bruce Lee Alive, which is really cool and which looks, amongst many other things, at this notion of Bruce Lee as a pioneer of realistic martial arts off screen. So really excited to have him coming on to discuss his books, his own experiences, getting stuck into the world of jiu-jitsu and combat sports. And yeah, it should be really interesting. That's dropping on Wednesday.
Yeah, sounds awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And then, we'll have Wednesday, and then we can also have a chat about the fights or post-fights. I guess time difference, it won't work. But either way, we'll put out a podcast on the upcoming fights on Wednesday.
Definitely.
Sounds good, Don. So we'll see you then.
Sweet, Jazz. Good to chat.